It is 8:11. Newstalk Sauga 960 Raw. Mike Richards. We're going to talk to our good friend Jeff Lumby in just moments. 8:40. Nancy Regan, who was a longtime fixture on CTV News in the Maritimes in Atlantic Canada, who has written a book about her struggles, internal ones actually, about having issues of actually being on camera. I mean, she'd interviewed Oprah, Madonna. She'd been there. She was a huge favorite for their Live at 5. And then she just had to stop. So she's got lots to talk about, her brand new book. And I'm sure Lisa LaFlamme will also be a matter of topic. And it is not a small topic. And people, if you're wondering why we're still talking about it, well, NBC Today. Okay. Do you know how rare it is that a Canadian story, especially a Canadian media story, would be one of their topics? It's because the brilliance of Bell in doing what they did. And I still, to this second, don't understand how they didn't see this coming and how this would be just catastrophically bad. But again, I think when you're dealing with the morally bankrupt and those that have just as much arrogance, they kind of think they can get away with it. I think they thought maybe this might go away or it would blow over. Clearly it has not. And when guys like Lloyd Robertson, who, that's the hand that fed him for 200 years, seemingly. I don't know how old Lloyd is. He got to be, it's like Interview with a Vampire. He's got to be 1,000. I just still don't know what the ramifications are. Like, I still am unsure. Does this mean that they will change their ways? Because I doubt that. Does this mean that this investigation that they all like to do, this internal investigation, which is just, it's almost laughable. But what happens because of all of this? Because since we talked to Jeff Lumby last, and by the way, there was just an enormous response when Jeff and I talked about the subject last week. It hasn't died down, Jeff. It hasn't died down. If anything, so, there are elements of it that have only gained steam. And as I'm sure you see on social media, every second post is from somebody. Sometimes it's like Anne Murray. Like, it's reached almost every part of this world I can think of. Great to have you on the show. And thanks for, sort of leading us into all of this talk, because the conversation's been excellent and people have really enjoyed hearing us discuss some of these elements.
Well, and you know what? Here's the other interesting thing, Mike. You and I can discuss this stuff without really worrying about any blowback, whereas a lot of people, and I have a lot of friends who still work with Bell, whatever, and they can't even click a like on social media without getting into trouble. So it's sort of paramount that the people who can talk do talk. Let's talk, because it's so important right now with all of the things that are happening in the world, with all of the woke cancel culture, with all of the stuff as a sort of background to this. It's really important that if we have the wherewithal and the means to discuss it and connect with people, we do, because I think that's what a lot of times these guys are counting on. The Michael Mellings of the world are counting on people to just shuffle it under the carpet like another mass gating at Bell. I mean, you mentioned NBC. I also saw, I didn't read the article, but I saw that it was in the the New York Times.
Yeah. Yes.
As a topic. So, I mean, it's certainly gaining traction, and Bell's, and with what's his name? Biblic? Is that his name? Bibic?
Burbage or whatever.
Bibic.
Yeah.
Mikhail, Mark, he's the CEO of Bell, and he's trying to walk this thing back. Well, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I don't know how that one's going to go for you, Mr. Bibic.
Yeah. It seems to be that they still just, when I see that and hear about that, I know, so they don't get it.
They don't get it.
That's what I mean. They don't get it. They think they can still worm their way out of this, because try passing off that Let's Talk beard that they pull out every year, because I don't know how you can honestly, I mean, the blowback on something like that.
This is laughable now. When they roll that out, I think it's February. Is that when that thing is?
Yes.
When they roll that thing out in February, it's just not going to have any teeth. It's just going to be and they'll parade the same folks up there. as they always have, whoever they have left at Bell, to be the face of the thing. And it just, I mean, they're the worst perpetrators.
Yeah.
They're the worst of all of the companies, and then they have the gall to parade this thing out there every year. I just,
and you know, it's funny because, you know, it makes you a little, and I'm not, I mean, I guess I'm a little nostalgic in some ways, and I guess as you get older, that's what happens. But I do really miss the older days of working for human beings, not an HR factory, not a conglomerate, not a nationally
not
traded,
not a boardroom of shareholders.
Yeah. I really, you know, when you saw the family that owned the company, you could go up and you could talk to Alan Waters, you could talk to Alan Slate, and yours is even, I would suggest, being in Western Canada and being Moffat, you had even more of that than I did.
It was very family, very family.
And you came from a family that also was, as people may or may not know, your family very deep rooted in Western Canadian broadcast.
Yeah, and you know, the thing that I will never happen again is Moffat. Like you mentioned, Moffat, and it was such a great company because they had a grassroots level of the chain. You know, like they had a recruiting process where you would start in Moose Jaw at CHAB, which was a fantastic radio station, just amazing. It was 800 on the dial AM. It could be heard everywhere in the province. It was well run. It was this is also where they tried out all of the new technical innovations. So CHAB Moose Jaw, when I was growing up with it in the late 70s, early 80s, had all the best equipment. You know, they were the first ones with the computer, you know, generated cart systems and music playlists and stuff. It was really cool. So you would move from, and they had like what, 6 or 7 stations. You would move from Moose Jaw to either Winnipeg, Calgary, or Edmonton. And if you were really great, you'd end up at like Seafox in Vancouver. But I mean, this was how it all worked there. And they really stressed content, and they really stressed bringing talent up through the ranks. Those ideals are gone. As a matter of fact, it's completely the other way around.
Yes.
It's money first and content last, and it should be 180 from that.
Yeah, and those stations made money.
Yeah,
that understanding of, if you put content matched with personality, that means ratings go up. People like it, and when the ratings go up, you can charge more money, you make more money. I mean, that's the business. Not that, you know, if they were in charge of McDonald's, that's like saying that Bell would look at it and say, "We're spending way too much money on meat." What do you mean? We got to cut back on that meat.
Or we got to get rid of the Big Mac.
Yeah.
I don't know what the big deal is with the Big Mac. We got to get rid of that.
What about the buns? Too much bread, I feel. Let's go with a meatless bunless sandwich. Well, sir, that would be air. Exactly. Think about it. Like, they just don't get of taking away what the actual content is. That's not how you make money. Just by cutting back, because at some point there'll be nothing to cut. And that's what you were saying last time. I mean, I still don't know how the CRTC doesn't get involved and say, "Oh, okay, enough is enough." But when they're owned by the companies that, you know, they funnel enough money to those that are the governing body, I guess you're not going to slap the hand that feeds you, I suppose.
Is this maybe also a lesson for shareholders, especially the ones that are active? Is this not a lesson for them? Because at some point, you know, this idea of 35 to 40 points of profit versus what used to be very, you know, owners of companies were very thrilled with 15 to 20 points, right? That's back in the day. That's back in the family-owned day. And that's why you had, you know, 20 people in the newsroom and a 5-guy morning show. And because they were quite comfortable with hiring good people to present an amazing product. And you know what? If they, at the end of the year, had 15 or 20, 25 points to show for it, great. But with this unrealistic notion of 37%, and it's never.
And that's not a very, I mean, think of the longevity. That's not the long game, because at some point there'll be no people left. I mean, I don't know how this doesn't dawn on them, but in that system that you and by the way, a lot of people here in Ontario would be unfamiliar with a company, for instance, like Moffat, but you would not be unfamiliar with names that came out of there here in Toronto. They would not be. Now, just why don't you mention some of the names that people would know who that was?
Well, Jerry Forbes, right?
Jerry Forbes. Well,
and
but
the whole Forbes family was huge in Moffat.
Yes. Now, Humble, did he not spend time with?
Yeah,
Moffat?
Humble Howard was at CFox. He was at CHAB. Danny Kingsbury was at CHAB. Also 630 Ched. On and on.
Dan Duran, was he not out there?
Who am I thinking of? He did mornings at the Mix.
Rob Christie.
Rob Christie,
yeah.
Huge Moffat recruit back in the day. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the names are all over the broadcasting map from the people who came out of Moffat, and most people stayed in Moffat as long as they could. It was such a great working environment,
Yeah. I always used to say about Chum, you get together with people who don't work at Chum to talk about how great it was when you worked at Chum. I mean, that's kind of how the reunions always go.